716 AD, 4610 AM. About 800 Arab warships attacked Constantinople, but only a very few made it back to their ports. The Greeks had a secret weapon for their navy known only as Greek fire, an incendiary that burned ships quickly and once started was almost impossible to put out. This year was 2592 years after institution of the Abrahamic Covenant in 1877 BC. It was also the 1460th year of the post-exilic chronology, began 745 BC, and the 1224th year since the founding of the Republic of Rome in 509 BC, which Constantinople inherited. Finally, this was 240 years after the fall of Rome. 1. Technology of the Gods. 720 AD, 4614 AM. The Moors were controlled by the Saracens of Egypt, and the Saracens took their orders from the Muslim Arabs, who had as their base of operations in the wars of Islam the ancient city of Damascus, the seat of Umayyad authority. Damascus sent instructions to the Arabs, now in southern France, to conquer the realm of the Franks. Reinforcements from the Visigothic realm of Spain were sent into southern France along the war front, while the Jews secured their control over the Christian Europeans that the Moors had subdued. Spain experienced a population explosion of Jewish communities as Jews sailed in from ports all around the Mediterranean, as news spread about the utopia they had in Spain. Christians were again sold as slaves to the local Jews, and a market was established where Jewish merchants trafficked in white slaves exported from Spain. The Arabic scholar al-Makari wrote, quote, "Whenever the Muslims conquered a town, it was left in the custody of the Jews," unquote. This led to growing Jewish population centres at Cordova, Tarragona and Granada. This was the year 1600 after the founding of the Israelite capital city of Samaria in 881 BC. Further, this was exactly 1440 years after 721 BC, when the last of the 10 tribes of Israel were deported as slaves into Assyria, as the kingdom of Judah remained intact. 1. Decline of the West. 2. The God-Kings of Europe. 731 AD, 4625 AM. The Anglo-Saxon scholar known as the Venerable Bede published his History of the English Church and People, a serious work of history that does not at all mention King Arthur. Bede also declared that the Julian calendar was slightly off, being in error 11 minutes and 14 seconds too long, causing an error of a day every 128 years. At this time he was ignored, and modification to the calendar would not be performed until 1582, when the Gregorian calendar succeeded to Julian. 1. Saxons, Vikings and Celts. 732 AD, 4626 AM. The Islamic army made a critical mistake in their European campaign. They had completely overrun the Visigothic realm, created a Jewish utopia, and occupied southern France. Here they should have stopped. Instead, they invaded the empire of the Franks, which was ruled by Charles the Hammer Martel, a successor to the Merovingian kings. This was 236 years after the Frankish people converted to Christianity, after the lead of their king, Clovis I. Charles Martel was the grandfather of the famous Charlemagne. Charles ruled almost all of Europe north of the Alps, from the Pyrenees to Hungary. The Arab army won several battles, took many towns and fortresses, and even marched almost all the way to Paris, but Charles the Hammer stopped their onslaught. He defeated the Saracens at Tours-Poitiers, and thus ended Muslim expansion in Europe. The Frankish victory over Islam is exactly 1044 years after the start of the Greek Seleucid calendar in 313 BC, just as it is 1044 years before the founding of the Israelite-descended Anglo-Saxon French Empire of the United States of America in 1776 AD. The Japanese record strange phenomena in the heavens, earthquakes and an epidemic. This was the year 5040 of the Phoenix chronology, or 360 times 14 years. 1. The decline of the West. 2. History in quotations. 734 AD, 4628 AM. After the defeat of the Saracens and Moors in France, a widespread white European animosity toward the Jews arose for their participation in allowing the Muslim atrocities in Spain and southern France. As this was the Dark Ages, we have few records, but the picture emerging is one of terror on the part of the Jews, who saw their own lives in peril should the Muslims pull all the way out of Europe. White enslavement, confiscation of properties, and even the abduction of beautiful Visigothic females would guarantee that the Jews would be dealt with harshly. The communication network of the Jews was international, and centuries before any other nation or nationality. Ships full of Jewish people and their belongings took off from European ports and gathered to vanish over the western Atlantic to, quote, an unknown and uninhabited land, unquote. Some called the destination Kalalus, and the general consensus among researchers is that the Jewish fleet sailed to Central America. A fleet of Jews also fled Rome. What is interesting is that the very next year is 735 AD, being 1447 years after 713 BC, when the Judahites, ancestors of the Jews, were delivered from the Assyrians under Sennacherib. The year 1447 BC was the year of the Israelite Exodus, calendarically inferring here that the fleets of Jews in their own exodus made it to their American destination in 735 AD. Further, 735 AD is 600 years after the Jewish population of Judea and Jerusalem is exterminated by the Romans, ending the Bar Kokhba rebellion in 135 AD. Because the historical presence of this Jewish population in the early Americas has not been verified, we can assume they perished likewise. This voyage in 734 AD was 1736 years after the founding of the throne of David in 1003 BC, 434 years being a judged time period. Also, this date was 2520 years, 360 times 7, after Jacob, Israel, and Esau were born in 1787 BC. The Japanese report again that in this year strange phenomena with earthquakes were seen in the skies. 1. Ancient man. 2. Pirates and the Lost Templar Fleet. 3. History in quotations.